Oh, this city is buzzing, and for good reason. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Sam LaPrade. This is Ottawa Business Matters, and we're going to tell you why business matters in this city. The one and only SUELING Ching is joining me now. Hi, SUELING.
Hi, Sam.
SUELING Ching, of course, President and CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade, a very big job. This past week, a really big job. We had the amazing Mayor's Breakfast with Premier Doug Ford.
Yes, we were so excited to have the Premier here in Ottawa, and lots of exciting news for Ottawa and for us. Really happy to see that demonstration of an appreciation for how important Ottawa is in the Ontario economy, and looking forward to continuing to build that relationship, because Queen's Park is very important to Ottawa, of course, but Ottawa is very important to Ontario. And we have some things coming up through our City Building Summit, through the launch of our Downtown Action Plan, that we know we're going to need to be working in close partnership with Queen's Park.
And I'm just going to tell everybody right now, Lisa MacLeod is joining us in a few minutes. So she's going to share some exciting news as well.
Right.
How important is it to have someone like Lisa join us here on Ottawa Business Matters?
We're thrilled to have Lisa. We're very grateful for her leadership and for her partnership. And to be honest, and I said this last week too, you know, we were very grateful for all of our elected officials at the provincial level with how they worked collaboratively with the business community through these last 3 or 4 difficult years in the pandemic. And we're looking forward to that same level of partnership as we, get excited about the future for Ottawa and how we're going to transform our downtown, how we're going to diversify our economy and grow our city.
And we know that the Ontario budget, obviously, I know you've got all eyes on that all the time when those big announcements are made. We're going to talk to Lisa about some of those in a minute. But when you think about businesses here in this community, I often think about the smaller businesses. They can't have their eyes on everything. That's why the Board of Trade is here. When you think about the budget process, how involved were you in this particular budget?
So throughout the year, I mean, we consult with our members, the leaders in the business community, and our partners, of course, at every level of government, to make sure that we're all aligned with what the priorities are for Ottawa and how we can move forward on an economic growth agenda. But the budget time is a special time where the governments have an opportunity to make some investments in strategic ways. And so we've been very happy with the announcements that came out of this Ontario budget, but we'll continue to unpack what that means as it relates to the things that we've identified as priorities here in Ottawa. So that impacts every size of business, every sector in Ottawa, and we engage all of those sectors to make sure that we're representing a whole of community and that we are really focused on the highest potential areas for our city.
Really important. And talking about building this city, of course, the City Builder Summit's coming up. Talk to me a little bit about that. April 23rd, is that right?
April 23rd. So it got pushed out by a week because the federal budget will be dropping on April the 16th. But we're excited about it. That event has really grown because we have been very thoughtful about making sure that the agenda is inclusive, that we're very focused on the most important things. So this year we'll be talking more about the downtown, how the federal government plays a part in revitalizing that down, maybe give a few teasers of some early findings from our work on the Downtown Action Plan. We'll be looking at city building through the lens of young people and bringing in some young people and getting their perspective. We'll do a breakdown on the high impact projects that are happening in Ottawa, including the hospital and other big projects. We do that every year. It's the most important or most popular, I should say, part of it. Looking at energy transition. So all of those things that, working together will build up our economic growth agenda.
Yeah, so important. And you mentioned as well the federal budget coming down, and you don't just sort of accept that. The next day you're in there talking about how important is it for you to get together right away with members of the Board of Trade?
It's a transition. It's a tradition here in Ottawa to get together the morning after the federal budget. And so we're looking forward to that. We're hosting it at the Chateau Laurier on the 17th of April, and Minister Suds will be there. We'll do a technical breakdown with MNP on what it means for business. And then we have some leaders from the Canadian Chamber as well as the Business Council of Canada coming in to talk about what that means for businesses at a sort of a higher level as well.
And I think about all the things you're doing. I mean, obviously the events are one big part of it. I always say to you, I don't know how you sleep because you don't sleep. You're always out at something. But those are really important. But you've integrated, I think about this show, Ottawa Business Matters, having this opportunity 1 hour a week, whether they're listening or whether they're watching, to put that focus on business. But you've integrated lots of other things. Talk to me about why you're on so many different platforms.
So the event is a really key way for people to connect with each other, to calibrate conversations about the future of the city. But in working with our economic partners, we've also talked about how can we continue to include more people in that conversation. And so we've got this show, of course, where we highlight business leaders and elected officials so that we can talk about the things that matter most to Ottawa. We have our newsletters that we run through the Ottawa Board of Trade. And then we're also just getting ready to launch our 20th edition of Capital Magazine. So Capital Magazine, we publish twice a year. There's an online version as well. This year, this summer, I should say, we're going to be focusing on the outcomes of the City Building Summit. We're going to be talking about young leaders in Ottawa and how they can help shape the city. And we're going to be talking about how music and culture is an important economic driver for Ottawa. So we invite all of our members and members of our business community to get involved as advertisers. They can sponsor content. There's an opportunity to demonstrate some thought leadership around city building as well.
Yeah, it's so important to have all these different forums for people to have their say as well, and also hear that great information. Coming up on the show, of course, David COLETTO joining us, as well as Rick Chase, two people that have really been leaders in this community and very involved in the Ottawa Board of Trade.
Yes, they've been wonderful colleagues and leaders with the business community through the Board of Trade and in many other ways as well. I personally admire how they have stepped up and really, I think are a great example for other members of the business community about how you can get involved and really shape the future of the city. So, plus they're a lot of fun.
They are a lot of fun, for sure. We're going to hear from them a little bit later. And speaking about fun, let's talk a little bit about 40 Under 40. I know the nominations just closed. But it also means that it's an exciting time because all of those applications, of course, will be reviewed, those nominations, and the big event happens in June.
Yes, so we really prioritize this program as a way to highlight business leadership among the young in our city who will be responsible for the future long after you and I are gone. And so we have all the nominations in, so internally we'll start going through the judging process, which is quite robust, but then also planning for our 40 Under 40 Gala, which will take place on June 21st. And of course the entire community is encouraged to come and join us and celebrate those young leaders.
And when you think about young leaders, we've had many on this show, we're going to have many to come. It really, and you mentioned it, I mean, those are going to be the people sitting in these seats that you and I occupy right now. How crucial is it that we support young people? And I know even through the Ottawa Board of Trade, membership-wise, I mean, they're supported, they're welcomed at the table.
100%. And we have to look for ways to deliberately include them in the conversation. Support them and their success is one piece of it, but also really integrate their perspectives as well into the work that we're doing. I was just at a round table the other day talking about AI and how we can use AI to increase productivity, and there were a lot of shall we say seasoned professionals having that discussion, and one young leader spoke up about midway through and completely changed how we viewed moving it forward. So I don't think we can underestimate it. It's like a cross mentorship piece, and so I think each of us should be thinking about how we can make sure that those people are at the table. And we're really encouraging, for example, businesses to bring some of your young leaders to the City Building Summit and exposing them to that conversation and having them at the table.
I know young people, I remember when my computer broke one time, I asked my 10-year-old to help. At the time, those young people, they really are catching that stuff.
My daughter has lots of opinions about city building as well. So yeah, it's amazing, when you give them the opportunity, what can happen. And so that's something that we're very focused on at the Board of Trade, is making sure there's a tremendous amount of diversity of thought, and including those of young leaders.
Now, we've teased it a little bit. Lisa MacLeod's going to be joining us. I really just want to spend a minute, because you and I have had this conversation off camera, and I want to have it on camera today. Lisa MacLeod has served this community for 18 years. Can we talk about the mental health piece for a second? How crucial it's been that she's come to the table and had such an open dialogue, but also about how tough it is on politicians and how challenging it is. Having her here today, obviously, to talk about lots of great things, but when you see a female, I'm going to say a female leader step up in that way, and you're also a female leader, does it help you on maybe those days where it feels a bit tough?
I would say thank you first to Lisa for her transparency. I mean, she has been very open, and I think that's opened a lot of doors for a lot of people. During the pandemic, as economic developers and as business leaders, we really were perhaps more aware than ever of how important mental health is to our community, to our businesses' success, to the economic growth of our city, of our province and our country. And so when you have leaders like Lisa and other business leaders who have done tremendous work through Royal Ottawa and QCH and others, it really is important. I especially am appreciative of Lisa's work because we need to make sure that it is attractive, that it is safe for women to throw their hat into the ring of leadership from a political perspective. And so we have to raise the expectations of how we're going to take care of those leaders, and so I am very supportive of the work she's done, and we'll continue to also support through the Board of Trade.
And I think when we think about whether it's, the House of Commons, Queen's Park, Ottawa City Hall, School Board, seeing more female representation there is only a good thing. But we've seen so many step away. So attracting people to those big jobs is so important.
100%. And I mean, in the public sector, yes, but even in the private sector, we've seen that as well. And what we know is that we need that diversity. We need those voices at the table if we are going together solve some of the biggest issues we're facing and take advantage of some of the biggest opportunities that we are facing. And so what we all need to be working together to make that as easy as possible.
Beautifully said. Thank you again. Always. SUELING Ching, of course, President and CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade. Well, we've teased you a couple times, but the time is now. Come on back. Lisa MacLeod, MPP for Nepean, celebrating 18 years of representation in this city. Come on back, everyone. And we're back on Ottawa Business Matters. I'm Sam LaPrade, and guess who's here? Lisa MacLeod, MPP for Nepean. Hello, my friend.
Hey, how are you?
I'm worried we're not going to have enough time to get through everything.
Well, it happens whenever we're together.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we should actually have our own show called Two Middle-Aged Ladies and a Cup of Tea.
I love it. I think that's a show.
Yeah,
that's a show.
Yeah, coffee talk or something.
We have so much to talk about, like I said. Let's start with the big news.
Yeah.
Premier Ford came in this week, had breakfast with hundreds of business leaders, but there were some big announcements.
Yeah, really excited. So as you know, I'm celebrating my 18th anniversary. So the Premier came to town to let me know that the Barnsdale exit, which I've been fighting for many years, was going to be built by the province in coordination with the City of Ottawa. So I'm very grateful for that. I almost think he just didn't want to take my texts and calls anymore on it. But it's going to be great news for the business community. He then, of course, spoke at my 18th anniversary, spoke to the Mayor's breakfast. We had him out to Barrhaven again. And he made a significant announcement with the mayor of a $37 million to the city on the acceleration fund for building homes. And as you know, the City of Ottawa continues to grow. We've been a fast-paced growth area in Barrhaven, where I represent, close to Richmond, where you live. Yeah. So we need to keep up with that. And I think the announcement was pretty significant. And I suspect we're going to see the Premier in Ottawa, in the nation's capital, far more often than we have in the past, and I think that's great news.
That is all great news.
Yeah.
That is all great news. Let's break it down a little bit, because Barnsdale, I think you just did it for me, because I've been wanting that for so long.
Yeah.
But I think about the businesses, Lisa. I think about how crucial that's going to be to business. All of that, the businesses that are around that area, how they're going to benefit. It's going to be great for residents. It's great for the city.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about it, and I'll talk about it geographically, obviously we have over 100,000 people living in Barrhaven right now. One exit off of Fallowfield is not enough. So for the housing supply that's continuing to grow in the community, it's required. But we're also strategically placed between Kemptville and Canada. So it's really important for those constituencies of Canada, Carleton, and Leeds and Grenville to be able to have that access and entry route into not just Barrhaven, but the rest of the city of Ottawa. And finally, I think if you look at the area, it's growing not just with homes, but with businesses. So the massive Amazon facility is there. The Tomlinson head office is there. We have major car parks both on Moody and on Strandherd, and of course IBEC, which is owned by Kaivan, which is making modular homes. And so for this new exit to be part of our community is not just about convenience, although that to me is very important, and I think probably for you and others. It's also about economic growth, and that's why it was really important for me to see this acknowledged. And I'll tell you something, what made me more excited, I knew it was coming in the budget because I've been relentless in the pursuit of this interchange. But for Peter Bethlen-Falvey, who sat beside me in cabinet for 4 years, to mention it in his budget speech, that was next level. That was my colleagues texting me and saying, how great is that? Former staff who worked for me in the ministries that I represented. And that was really cool to have our community mentioned in the budget speech on the floor of the House. Pretty incredible.
Pretty incredible. And then let's talk about the 37 million.
Yeah.
That's very welcome news. So walk me through that piece. Why now?
Well, I think the province is in a housing crisis. I don't think anyone would disagree at any level of government that we do not have the supply. So this incentivizes our municipalities to continue to grow where they have developable lands. And we know our community is one of the highest growth in the city, actually in the country. Stittsville also is another area where you're experiencing high growth, and Findlay Creek and Riverside South. So all those old communities of or new communities of what was old Nepean Carleton are experiencing that. So we need to support our municipalities so they can build the key infrastructure, both soft and hard, in the communities. And when I say hard infrastructure, it's not just interchanges, it's roads, it's bridges, it's transit. And then the more soft infrastructure like recreational planning and making sure that these communities are livable. So this will go, I think, a long way in supporting our community to be built. The budget also talked about building more schools, which also is a signal that Barrhaven and Stittsville and Riverside South and Findlay Creek are high growth areas with lots of new families. So that was also very positive. So I think it was a great budget for the city of Ottawa. And I was joking earlier, in 2006, I was elected. 2012, my 6-year anniversary, Dalton McGuinty was closing the racetrack in my riding, which we finally were able to save. And in 2024, on my 18th anniversary, the Premier is giving me some really nice gifts for Barrhaven and Nepean. So I'm really grateful. I mean, this was it was a great budget, and despite some of the challenges I've had by being off as a result of some of my mental health, it's nice to know that I was effective around that table.
Absolutely, you were. And let's talk a little bit about 18 years. I think people will throw around numbers. 18 years. 18 years of being elected, you know, with all of the pressures, all of the changes that this community has gone through, that has not been easy, but you've been steadfast.
Yeah, well, what was really cool about the initial riding, Nepean Carleton, which Pierre Poilievre and I shared, was sort of this urban growth that was happening in Barrhaven and Stittsville and Riverside South, and so a totally different vibe. And then the more bedroom communities of older Nepean, like Bell's Corners and Trent Arlington, Craig Henry. And then the rural communities of Osgood, Greeley, Goulburn Township, and Manotick. And so it was really exciting trying to balance the agrarian roots with the high growth. And then of course in 2016 I decided that the 2018 election I would run in Nepean when the riding split, and to see the growth. And what I always say is it's spectacular, or it sparkles, and I say it for this reason. One of the coolest things for a kid from Glasgow, Nova Scotia to experience is all of the cultures in my community, whether it's the Indo-Canadian, Chinese Canadian, the African Canadian, the Indigenous Canadians, the Francophone Canadians, and to see everybody share in their cultures and bring people together. That has been probably one of the greatest things. But it has been a challenge in making sure that growth keeps up with growth, and making sure that we have the hospitals, the healthcare. We just opened, we're opening a new long-term care facility we were able to get, or I was able to get some funding from the provincial government for. So these are all things that you need to make sure are in place when people move into your community. And then of course the roads, bridges, transit, and an interchange on the 416.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about business, because of course all of this, business thrives in this community. Would I have ever, when I lived in Barrhaven a million years ago as a child, think that there was going to be an Amazon distribution center like that in Barrhaven? So how important is business to Lisa MacLeod?
Well, I come from a pro-business party. I've spoken a lot about the need for growth, and when the economy is good, we can continue to grow, and it's beneficial for people. And I think that's what was good about this budget. But when I look at my community and growing, and you're talking about Amazon, and then you talk about Area X.0, which is run by Invest Ottawa, some of the countries, some of the world's newest developments are being created in our community, including film and television, for example, which isn't something we think about in Nepean, but it is happening. Animation in our city is one of the most vibrant in the world. People are competing with Ottawa, and that's all located, or most of it is anyway, on Antares Drive and in that business park in Ottawa. So it's really incredibly important. And when I heard SUELING talk, and we talked about the pandemic, and I had been the minister responsible for the hardest hit sectors, including, the artists, the athletes, and the entrepreneurs, it really hit home how much we need to make sure that there is a safety net for them in the event of another crisis like that, or a pandemic. And so it was really hard to deal with that, because you always think sometimes in dollars and cents, but I also felt, because of my lived experience, we had to look after their mental health as well, because you can't make a great decision if you're not being supported emotionally and psychologically. And so I did a lot of events with the community, business community, about their mental health at that time, because there was just absolute worry, and I don't think it's gone away. So I think it's an important thing that we're talking about, which is why it's great to work with the Chamber, the Ottawa Board of Trade, with SUELING, and then also Sonia Shorey over at Invest Ottawa. I mean, and I said this the other day to the Premier's office, the two most powerful women are running business. They're doing a great job as advocates, as champions, but even more than that, they are completely leading the way on how this city looks at business, and they're doing it in a compassionate way. They're hardcore for sure in business and getting their message across, and they're relentless, and we couldn't be luckier to have leaders like the two of them.
I'm always convinced they have 28 hours in their day, and we only have 24, because they seem to jam so much into a day.
I know,
it's amazing.
I know, they're just incredible.
We only have a couple minutes, which makes me so sad, because I could spend an hour with you.
And I could spend an hour talking.
That's true. So let's talk a little bit about your mental health. We mentioned it when I talked to SUELING, because I really wanted her take on it. But you've been very supportive of women running in jobs like this. You talked about, and I love your path widening, sort of analogy. Talk to me a little bit about how to get more women into roles like yours.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult now when you see the level of harassment, the death threats. I mean, I had them, and the toll it takes on your family, but also your own mental health and your capacity to do your job. And so I've been open and vocal about it, because you just mentioned, and people may not have caught on to that when I talk about widening the trail. And the point is, there are a lot of trailblazers, and they happen usually about 100 years ago, or 80 years ago, or 50 years ago. And so some of us wonder where we're at in terms of being a politician or a public figure. And I say widen the trail. There has to be more women as part of it. There has to be more men who support women as part of it. And so we need to widen the trail, even if we're not a trailblazer. And that means we have to talk about people's mental health. We have to condemn, no matter who is being attacked, any type of threat, intimidation, or harassment in politics or in business. There is no whatabouts. There should be no discussion over whether it's right or wrong because of someone's political position. Another person should never threaten another person's safety.
Agreed.
And that has an impact. And so I want to continue to support women getting involved in politics. I want to support men who are in it for the right reasons.
Absolutely. Congratulations. 18 years.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lisa MacLeod,
I'm legal in Quebec.
There you go. Absolutely. I love it. Lisa MacLeod, of course, MPP for Nepean. Stay with us on Ottawa Business Matters. And we're back on Ottawa Business Matters. We have Rick Chase with us, VP for Gifford Carr. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
It's an exciting day to have you here. Lots to talk about. So first of all, let's start with, what is Gifford Carr?
Wow, that's an evolving question. But Gifford Carr is it's one of the largest independent insurance companies in the province these days. Wow. And so its roots are really strong in Ottawa, 75 years here in Ottawa, and just celebrated 75th anniversary, I should say. So Gifford Carr does really all types of insurance, home, auto, commercial insurance, also do financial planning, which would have life insurance and other types of insurance and investment work, and recently employee benefits and pension work as well. So really all-encompassing for our clients.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop.
An independent business group, that's very rare, is it not?
It's becoming more rare, right? There's a lot of amalgamation in the insurance space. Like I it's maybe not the most exciting topic, insurance, but as you get under the currents, you're like, wow, there's a lot of moving pieces happening from ownership structures and lots of private equity coming into the space, US dollars coming into the space here in Canada. So there's a lot of things flowing. So now to be still locally owned and operated, it is becoming a little bit more rare.
Okay, now we know where to find you.
Yeah.
Now we don't want to know the man behind your role there. You're very community oriented.
Yeah.
The other night with 600 other people, you and I were having fun at the Ottawa Senators Gala, which was a lot of fun. And I think those are opportunities to get out and do that stuff. But there's also all that stuff that you do behind the scenes that we wouldn't see you at. Talk to me a little bit about all the things you're involved with right now.
Sure, and thank you for highlighting that. And that was a really great event. It was nice to see, I've said this a few times, but I think events like that, when you look at, let's say, the Ottawa Senators, their ability and their reach, but then also I was looking at the players that night, the young players who are future pillars of our community. There's the ones, I think, certainly Daniel Alfredson, Claude Giroux, like they get it, they understand the how important they are. But and how much they can use their profile for good in the community. But I was watching the 20 to 25-year-old crowd, and they were, an event like that for them was, I think, really important for them to see, like, wow, the community, like $2 million to two really important causes in one night is not, like in North America, that doesn't happen very often, let alone here in Ottawa. So 100%. You could see, and then you'd see people in the community really, essentially donating. Yes, it's a live auction, but when an item is maybe valued at 1/8 of what someone is donating that night, right? So I was really encouraged to see the young players start to see, like, wow, this community is not just behind us, but they're really behind the community.
For sure. And you're a hockey guy.
I love hockey.
Yeah.
Absolutely love hockey, and love the Ottawa Senators. I've been a fan through the good and the bad, I would say, and
right.
And lots of good, thankfully, throughout the years.
For
but
sure.
From a community standpoint, I think it's important to have, it's a bit philosophical for those watching, but the community really drives business. I'm stealing from SUELING here a little bit.
That's okay.
But community really drives business, and business really drives community. And there's such a need to, I think, for business leaders to look at those things as pillars. So how am I not just giving back to my business community that's done well for me and my family, but then also that breaks into, is there a charitable component? Is there a kind of business association component? So for me, the charitable components are things like Shepherds of Good Hope has, we put on a hockey tournament called Hockey Helps the Homeless in support of Shepherds of Good Hope. That just happened just a few days ago, and exceptional fundraiser. Also gets a lot of the community going, more hockey, but it's more than just hockey, right?
More than just hockey. And I've always wondered, I think about you, busy guy, out all the time. You don't have to do all that community stuff. But sometimes people say to me, Sam, it's just in my DNA. Is it just in your DNA?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in my DNA, and it also comes to having a great partner in my wife, Heather, being, that's not in her DNA. And we work really well in that sense, where she gets that it is a part of being in love with the community, but also recognizing how much that community's done for our family, and that she definitely holds down the fort with all kinds of other things in our life that are really, really important, but that are less out in front of the community type work. So having that partnership is really key, but it allows me the opportunity to be in the community quite a bit.
And the Ottawa Board of Trade obviously is such a launch point for so many, maybe they start a new business or they got a new job as a VP and they want to become integrated. And I find sometimes people join the Board of Trade and then 3 or 4 years later, we see them on the board, we see them running their own events. So I find that it's such a beautiful gateway and so supportive within the Board of Trade as well.
Yeah, 100%. I was really, really young in business in Ottawa and joined Chamber of Commerce at the time. We weren't all amalgamated. Right? We were on, and so that Chamber of Commerce was exceptional at providing me mentorship, guidance. I was really I was 20 and I was accepted as if I was a long-time business leader, and it provided me with some really great coaching and just elbow to elbow. Okay, let's get involved in this small event. Let's give back together. But then you build some relationships that have been lasting. Some of my best clients today came from some business leaders that I would have worked with, well over 20 years ago. Amazing. So there is this symbiotic relationship. I try to share that all the time with young people in business. Is like, you just have to get involved. It's not about selling or soliciting. No, it's just get to know somebody at the level where you're working on that event together, or you're working, whatever it is, whatever your passion is, just get into that environment with other people who are passionate about the same thing, and great things happen.
For sure. And I think about the Ottawa Board of Trade, if we think about it like a locker room for a second, you're kind of like the Claude Giroux now. You're kind of in there going, okay, let's,
Which I don't think I'm the old person at the table, but there's times where,
But in terms of coming to the table and being a part of all that, if you were to go to a board event and see maybe a face you hadn't seen before, you're not a shy guy.
No.
You're going up, right, and saying, hi, I'm Rick Chase. Yeah.
100%. And I love that, and I want to understand their story and how we can, and I think that's the role, because it was there for me. So some of that give back is like, wow, there were people who went out of their way to come over to the new person in the room who's, young in business, but also young, and said, and be a connector and really try to make sure that I felt like I was part of that community. And that's how I see now. And I'm not there's some people in our Board of Trade family who they're experts at this, and we have an ambassador corps that they all volunteer to say we'll do this. But certainly it's important to me that everybody feels really welcome and feels like they have a team behind them, even if they're a solo practitioner, if they're a solo business owner, that they really feel like they're part of a broader community that supports them.
Yeah, it really is. It really is important. Words of advice for someone that is listening or watching us right now, and they're like, I've wanted to become a member of the Ottawa Board of Trade. I'm a little bit nervous. What would you say to them?
I'm a firm believer that every business in Ottawa and surrounding areas truly should be a member of the Board of Trade, at minimum at the lowest membership commitment. And that's because the advocacy work that goes on behind, nobody loves talking about advocacy. Like it's kind of like virus protection for your computer. You don't really even think that it's there, but it's operating, it's protecting your computer when you're not able to even be paying attention. You're just sending an email to a client and your virus protection is doing its work. The Board of Trade is doing that work. We see it with these deep connections. The Premier was just here at a Board of Trade event. Like, most small businesses don't have access to the Premier to talk about what's really important to their business. And so being a member and providing your membership to an organization that really relies on membership dollars to do that behind the scenes, not super, exciting to talk about. We want to talk about the event. We don't often want to talk about all the work that goes into it, but there's a cost to that. And as a business in the community, it's like, that's table stakes. Must be a member. Then I would say that the gateway from there, is to use your words, is now how do I get involved and actually try to potentially drive a return for my business out of my membership, which is totally possible.
Yeah,
totally possible
for sure. So you're obviously out at a lot of different events. Is there somebody missing at the table? Like, when you think about all the different people we bring together, is there somebody you're still thinking you need to come to the table to make this work?
I would say, I would always answer the question and say no, because it's such a great and diverse business community that comes to, and then I think issue by issue. So I would say pandemic taught us that there were missing people from the table. The business and health were so much more connected than we really thought, right? We just, SUELING just talked about it, Lisa talked about it, right? So there is, so if I'd answered that question before the pandemic, I would have said, no, we've got a really good, mutually beneficial relationship with all of these stakeholders that are at the table. Pandemic happens, like, wow, we need to, and I credit SUELING, I credit Dr. Etches, and for really coming together. The public health was talking to the business community weekly about what was happening in their businesses and when we figured out that mental health, financial health, business health, physical health, like, these things were probably more tied than ever before. So I would say issue by issue, sometimes we learn that, we need another stakeholder at our table so that the business community can really work through something.
Yeah, brilliant. Sadly, we only have 1 minute left.
Yeah.
But I want to ask. We've just had the Premier here. It's been really exciting. We have that federal budget obviously coming up in April. Talk to me a little bit about how you watch those things. Do you rely on the Board of Trade as well? I mean, you want to dive in a little bit yourself, but you rely on them when those budget announcements are made.
Yeah, I do. Right. I mean, we're busy in our business. We're busy serving our clients, and so to know that, again, that there's an organization that is really doing some of that work on our behalf, and it allows me to kind of come in and out on the things that are really important to me. I can skim the budget knowing that somebody's really not just gone through the budget, but has been at the table all the way through that budget process and has really tried as best as possible to influence the impact here for Ottawa.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time always. Rick Chase joining us today from Gifford Carr. He's the VP there. When we come back, David COLETTO is going to be in this seat. Stay with us on Ottawa Business Matters. Well, our next guest I have done countless radio interviews with, but he's right here in studio for Ottawa Business Matters, and it is David COLETTO. Hi, David.
Hi, Sam.
David COLETTO from Abacus Data. You're everywhere, by the way. You're on forums, you're in the media. Tell us, for those that aren't familiar with Abacus Data, tell us what you do.
So I ask people questions for a living.
Yeah.
I'm a pollster. I run a company called Abacus Data, founded it 14 years ago. And every week I get this amazing job where I ask thousands of Canadians hundreds of questions about things related to what they're buying, about how they feel about work. Politics is my personal passion, where I do a lot of work in, and everything in between. And it's a really cool job, and there are good times. You feel the pain when people are feeling anxious, but it is for someone as curious as I am, it's kind of the best job you can imagine.
It is the best job, and we were really relying on you, and I know many still do, but when I was on radio every day, I relied on you to give me the pulse of Canadians, and it is such an interesting job. Give us a sense of some of your clients. Who are you working with?
Yeah, we work with one of the best parts of the job is the breadth of things. Like yourself, a journalist, you get to become almost like an expert on everything. So we work with clients as big as Google, to a number of unions, to associations, nonprofits, charities. We do some public sector work with the government of Nova Scotia, the government of Canada, and then pretty much everything in between. I was just earlier this week talking to a good friend of mine who runs a local lawn care company, Green Unlimited. I was meeting with his team. We had done some research on their customers, all the way to briefing, the CEO of a large company. So in a given week, it's pretty broad. But at the core of everything we do is asking people questions to understand different audiences, whether it's their customers, whether it's the public that they're looking to engage, whether it's their employees and or members if they're a union. And so it's a really interesting line of work.
Well, it's so interesting because I think so many businesses can't afford to have a wrong turn. They need to hear what the science behind the data is telling them, right? I mean, I think it's a really important piece. You're not going to start a new marketing initiative if that's not going to attract a new audience for you.
Yeah, I like to frame it that good decisions require good data.
I love it.
Right? And if you're a leader of a small business, of a large corporation, of a government, and you're making decisions that are going to have consequences, it's easy for me to say I'm in this business. Invest a little bit of your time and money and energy into making sure that decision is grounded in good research, that you could feel confident. That's the thing. I think what I do every day is give leaders confidence to make those good decisions, that they know there's no perfect decision, but there are better decisions than others, and I think I get the good fortune of helping people make those decisions.
Yeah, so important. And just like so many of the leaders that sit down with me here every single week, you could just go to your job 9 to 5. I know you don't work 9 to 5, by the way, but just do your thing and not be with the Ottawa Board of Trade, not be involved in community initiatives, and you do that. Tell me a little bit about how you involve yourself in the community.
So I've been on the board of the Ottawa Board of Trade now for a number of years. I joined during the pandemic, so I didn't get to meet most of my colleagues for the first few months, but it's been a really great experience. I think I do have a business that takes me all over the country, all over North America, but at the end of the day, Ottawa is my home, and I care passionately about making this city as good as it can. And I think the business community, whether we're talking about large enterprises, small businesses that I frequent in my neighborhood in Westboro or Wellington West, are so important to the energy and the livability of the city. So what I can do as a member of the Ottawa Board of Trade is give back, right? Support the advocacy work that they do. I'm also on the board of Ottawa Riverkeeper, which is a very different organization, but is still trying to protect and maintain and cultivate a really important asset in our community, the Ottawa River. And so when I think of my involvement in both of those organizations, thriving business community leads to a thriving city, a healthy watershed leads to a healthy community. I'm proud to be part of both.
Even though you didn't, sort of orchestrate that, it does work beautifully together.
I just thought of it right now. So now the magic of it works. But I think there's so many other organizations, right? Whether you're in the arts or whether you're passionate about music or agriculture, right? Like Ottawa is such a diverse, interesting city, and we need people to be involved in the things that they're excited about, and all of us kind of pulling together to make this city as good as it can be. And so I'm doing my very little part in that.
And when you think about, especially as a pollster, curious guy that you are, when you think about, people bringing a business here to the nation's capital, maybe, bringing a business that's been established somewhere else, is this a welcoming community, David?
I think fundamentally it is. I think it can feel, I think I didn't grow up in Ottawa. I grew up in Toronto. I came to Ottawa to go to school, and now I've lived here more than I've lived anywhere else. It is my home. My family's here. I can't imagine living anywhere else. But it sometimes has this reputation of being a government town. It is a government town, right? But what people often don't think about who aren't from here is that there is a thriving entrepreneurial spirit that's based on an unbelievable quality of life, right? And so what I know from the research I do with employees and workers who are looking to decide where do I work, people fundamentally want a good job. They want to be paid fairly, but they also want, they don't want to spend 2 hours in a car getting to and from work. They want to be able to get out of the city and experience the outdoors. Guess what? Ottawa, for the most part, has all of those, right? And I think creates a really good quality of life. So I think it's a very welcoming city. I think it's a progressive place that welcomes people from all different parts of the world, but also I think feels very small town, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think there's a connection here, and I could be walking in Orleans and run into somebody I know, even though I live literally almost half an hour away, because it's a huge city geographically as well.
So a little birdie tells me that you ride your bike like 20 kilometers before going to work.
Yes.
That's phenomenal. I'm not doing that, let's just be honest. But that is that work, live, play, right?
Well, someone's told me I've basically moved as close to Gatineau Park as you possibly can in this city. I live just over the river. And to me, that is like my playground, right? To be able to hop on a bike, and haven't been out yet, but like I'm planning to in the next few days to get out because the weather is turning nice. And then within 10 minutes, I'm in this like urban but not urban park that I think is, for me, like it is the crown jewel of the National Capital Region. And whether you like to ski, hike, bike, it's there. And so it's my therapy. It's how I keep in shape, and I would literally there's a few things I would do more than cycling, but it's really high up on the list.
Is there, when you're riding along, do you think of great questions to ask Canadians?
I do. My best ideas, I think, come from that like quiet that comes with just riding, and not, sometimes you sort of stress about things or you think about how to solve some problems, but it's usually a mix of listening to some interesting podcast like this one that sparks an idea. Oh, we should explore that, or the way that an hour-long ride, if you're somebody who runs or does anything for long periods of time, allows you to kind of exit or vacate your normal thinking and start thinking about things. And so it's a big part of where the creativity, I think, comes from.
And is there a question that you're wanting to ask Canadians, you just haven't, for whatever reason, had a chance? Is there something that's burning in you, even here, maybe even locally?
Not really. I as the owner of a research company, it is my ability to ask questions, anything that comes to mind, that makes that job really cool. But the question I'm always asking, that I always want to know, that I think tells us so much about what's going on, is what's keeping you up at night.
Love that question.
Right? What's keeping you up at night? And when you ask that and you don't give people answers, you let them answer anything they want, when you track that response over time, you start to get what is the mood of the country, what is the things that are causing people angst. And for some it's personal issues, but what we're seeing continually is this general anxiety around the cost of living, around can I live the life that I want? But that question, I think, just gets so quickly at what's making people happy or sad or anxious at any given moment.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? Well, very little. I'm very privileged to have a great house, family, and job. But I think what keeps me up at night is what I'm like. This is getting really personal now. Is like what I'm doing important enough, right? Am I having an impact? I lost my mother-in-law 4 years ago. She was 62 years old, and since then, that question for my spouse and I just keeps repeating itself, right? Like, you have a limited amount of time on this planet. What are you doing with it? And I know that I've got a lot of privileges and a almost responsibility to do something with that time. And so that's the thing that keeps me up at night. When I go to bed, is like, did I do everything I could have done? And am I living in the moment?
I love that. I'm once again getting personal, but I find myself, I've had recently, nobody super close to me, but around me, passing away at young ages, and I think to myself, what's my everyday going to be like? So I absolutely agree.
Can I give you an example?
Yeah, of
something
course.
I now regret. So the state funeral for Prime Minister Mulroney was here. There was the viewing. You could have gone. I didn't go. And then I reflected after, while as I was watching his funeral, I was like, why didn't I go? Well, I was so busy, and I got lost in the moment that, like, here was a moment to go and just be part of history, reflect, you know, celebrate his contributions, and I just got lost in the week. And so it was just a reminder sometimes to just step back and take advantage of those things that we can be part of, and living in Ottawa, there's lots of those that we sometimes take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. We are so blessed. Festival after festival, organization, you know, putting on nonprofit events. I mean, it's just, there's all sorts of things going on, but something so historical like that. I totally understand that. And now I regret that I didn't go. And I watched the funeral as well. It was phenomenal. We have literally 30 seconds left. So what words of advice would you give David COLETTO 25 years ago?
It is to, I actually feel like the advice is do what you did, which is never say no to a good opportunity. Right? I look back at the trajectory of my life. I look really young. I'm in my 40s now. All of the things that I've been able to do are because some really thoughtful person gave me a chance or gave me an interesting opportunity, and I didn't think about why I shouldn't do it. I thought about why I should, and I usually said yes, and here we are talking.
Sometimes I fake it till I make it. Does that make sense to you? When I was really young, somebody would say, "Oh, here's a job," and I think I know I could do the top 3 things, but the other 10 I've never done before. But I just said, okay, I'm going to do it.
Do it, and you learn.
And you do learn,
Yeah.
and to be honest, and just like you said, you have patient people around you, which is very
Fake
important.
it till you make it.
Yeah.
Say yes to almost everything that comes, especially when you're young, because you've got tons of energy.
Yeah, beautifully said. Always a pleasure. Always a
Thanks,
pleasure.
Sam.
David COLETTO joining us today, of course, from Abacus. He might be calling you and asking you a very important question, so you want to take that call. It's Ottawa Business Matters. I'm Sam LaPrade. Thank you so much to all of our guests today. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, support local. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.